The exploration ship Endeavour drifted quietly through the darkness at the edge of the solar system. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge, watching the stars through the main window. His crew had been out here for 3 months, looking for signs of other life in the universe. They had found nothing but empty space and cold rocks. "Captain, we're getting something strange on the sensors," said Lisa Grant from her pilot seat. Her fingers moved quickly over the controls. "It's big. Really big." Jake walked over to look at her screen. The readings showed something massive, moving toward them. It was bigger than any ship humans had ever built. Much bigger. "Can you tell what it is?" Jake asked. "Not sure, sir, but it's not natural. Someone built this thing." Tony Rodriguez looked up from his engineering station. "Captain, whatever that is, it just appeared out of nowhere. 1 second space was empty, the next second it was there." Jake felt his heart beat faster. This was it. This was what they had been looking for. First contact with an alien race. He had dreamed of this moment since he was a child. "Open a communication channel," Jake ordered. "Let's try to talk to them." Lisa worked at her controls. "Channel open, sir." Jake cleared his throat. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the human exploration vessel Endeavour. We come in peace. We would like to establish communication with you." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the screen in front of them flickered to life. An alien face appeared on the screen. It had gray skin and large black eyes. Its mouth was small and thin. When it spoke, its voice was cold and harsh. "I am High Commander Vexthul of the Zephyrian Empire. Your species is unknown to us. We will scan your vessel and your homeworld to determine your threat level." Jake tried to smile. "We're not a threat to anyone. We're explorers. We just want to learn about the universe and maybe make some friends." The alien's black eyes seemed to look right through him. "Scanning complete. Your species has a history of violence and chaos. You fight constant wars among yourselves. You destroy your own environment. You are primitive and dangerous." "Wait," Jake said quickly. "Yes, we've had problems in the past, but we're trying to do better. We've learned from our mistakes. We want peace." "Peace is not possible with your kind," Vexthul said. His voice grew even colder. "We have studied your world. We have seen your wars, your weapons, your cruelty to each other. Species like yours always bring chaos wherever they go." Lisa whispered to Jake. "Sir, I'm reading massive energy buildup on that ship." Vexthul continued talking. "The Zephyrian Empire has brought order to this sector of space for thousands of years. We will not allow a chaotic species like yours to threaten that order. You have 30 of your Earth days to surrender completely. Your entire species must submit to Zephyrian rule." Jake stepped closer to the screen. "You can't be serious. You're talking about enslaving billions of people based on what you think you know about us." "We do not think. We know. Your surrender is not a request. It is a requirement. If you refuse, we will destroy every human in the galaxy." "And if we agree to your terms?" Jake asked. "Your useful members will serve the Empire as workers. The rest will be eliminated. This is more mercy than most primitive species receive." Jake felt anger rising in his chest. "That's not mercy, that's genocide." "That is order," Vexthul replied. "Chaos must be removed for peace to exist. We have done this many times before. No species has ever successfully resisted the Zephyrian Empire." The alien made a gesture with his hand. Suddenly, all the lights on the Endeavour went out. The engines stopped working. Life support systems began to fail. The crew grabbed onto their stations as the artificial gravity flickered. "What did you do to us?" Jake shouted. "We have disabled your primitive vessel to demonstrate our power. You will drift here until your air runs out, unless you choose to end your life more quickly. Your ship will serve as a warning to any other humans who might consider resistance." Tony worked frantically at his station. "Captain, they've somehow shut down our entire power grid. I can't get anything back online." Lisa tried to restart the engines. "Nothing's working. We're completely dead in space." Vexthul's image began to fade from the screen. 30 days, human. Tell your leaders that resistance is impossible. The Zephyrian Empire has conquered hundreds of worlds. Your tiny, violent species will be no different. The screen went black. The alien ship vanished as quickly as it had appeared, leaving the Endeavor drifting helplessly in space. Jake looked around at his crew. They all stared back at him with fear in their eyes. But Jake also saw something else there. He saw anger. He saw determination. "Sir," Lisa said quietly, "emergency power is starting to come back online. Very slowly, but it's coming back." "How is that possible?" Jake asked. Tony grinned, despite their situation. "I guess their fancy alien technology doesn't understand human engineering as well as they think it does. We built redundant systems on top of redundant systems. Takes more than a power drain to keep us down permanently." Jake felt a small spark of hope. "Can you get us home?" "It'll take some time, but yeah. I can jury-rig enough power to get the engines working again." As the emergency lights came on, Jake thought about the alien's words. Vexthal had called humans primitive and chaotic. He had said no species had ever resisted the Zephyrian Empire. But Jake wondered if the aliens really understood what they were dealing with. Humans were chaotic, that was true. But they were also stubborn. They were also creative. When someone told them something was impossible, they had a habit of proving that person wrong. "Get us home, Tony," Jake said. "We need to warn Earth, and we need to start preparing." "Preparing? For what, sir?" Lisa asked. Jake looked out at the stars where the alien ship had been. "For war. Because I don't think we're going to surrender. I don't think that's who we are." The Endeavor slowly came back to life. Its engines sputtered, then roared. The ship turned toward home, carrying the most important message in human history. The Zephyrians thought they knew everything about humanity, but Jake had a feeling they were about to learn just how wrong they could be. President Helen Carter sat at the head of the emergency council table in the White House Situation Room. The room was packed with military leaders, scientists, and government officials. Everyone looked worried. Captain Jake Morrison had just finished telling them about his encounter with the Zephyrians. "So they gave us 30 days, President Carter said slowly. 30 days to surrender our entire species or face total destruction." "That's correct, Madam President," Jake replied. "They made it very clear. They think we're too dangerous and chaotic to be allowed to exist freely." General Rick Barnes, the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, leaned forward. "What kind of weapons are we dealing with? What did you see?" "They disabled our entire ship without firing a shot," Jake said. "Some kind of energy weapon that shut down all our systems at once." "Their ship was massive, easily 10 times bigger than our largest vessels." Admiral Kate Sullivan frowned. "Did they give any indication of how many ships they have?" "No, but from the way their commander talked, it sounded like they have a lot. He said they've conquered hundreds of worlds." Dr. Nina Foster, the country's top scientist, spoke up. "Did you get any readings on their technology while your ship was being scanned?" Jake nodded to Tony Rodriguez, who had come with him. "Tony got some data before they shut us down." Tony opened his laptop and connected it to the room's main screen. "It's not much, but I did pick up some energy signatures. Their power source is unlike anything we've seen. It's incredibly efficient. But here's the strange thing. I think it relies on some kind of network connection between their ships." "What do you mean?" Dr. Foster asked. "When they disabled us, I detected communication signals between different parts of their ship, like they were all connected somehow. If that's true for their whole fleet, it might be a weakness." General Barnes shook his head. "Even if it is, we're still talking about fighting an enemy that's had space travel for thousands of years. Our most advanced weapons would probably seem like sticks and stones to them." "Maybe," President Carter said. "But they made one big mistake when they gave us 30 days. "What mistake is that?" Admiral Sullivan asked. "They gave us time to think, time to prepare. If they really wanted to destroy us quickly, they would have done it right away. Instead, they're giving us a month. That tells me something." "What does it tell you?" Jake asked. President Carter stood up and walked to the window. "It tells me they want us to surrender without a fight. They're used to enemies who give up when they see how powerful the Zephyrians are. They expect us to be so scared that we'll just roll over and die. General Barnes laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. Are we going to fight them? Because if we are, we need to be realistic about our chances. Our chances of winning a normal war against them are 0, President Carter said. But who says we have to fight a normal war? She turned back to the group. I've been studying human history all my life. You know what our greatest strength has always been? We don't know when to quit. When someone tells us something is impossible, we find a way to do it anyway. Dr. Foster nodded slowly. The president has a point. Humans have always been good at improvising. We take whatever we have and make it work. But what do we have? Admiral Sullivan asked. They can shut down our power systems. They have ships 10 times bigger than ours. They've conquered hundreds of worlds. We have something they don't expect, President Carter said. We have the home field advantage. They're coming to our territory. They don't really know us. They think they do, but they only looked at our wars and our problems. They didn't look at what makes us special. Commander Alex Thompson, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. What do you mean, Madam President? Think about it. Every other species they've conquered probably had a unified government. One leader who could surrender for everyone. But that's not how humans work. Even if I wanted to surrender, I couldn't speak for every human on Earth. We're too stubborn and independent for that. General Barnes smiled for the first time since the meeting started. You're talking about guerrilla warfare, hit-and-run tactics, make them fight for every inch. Exactly. They expect a quick, clean conquest. Instead, we give them chaos. Real chaos. The kind that makes their organized empire break down. Dr. Foster was already making notes. We need to start reverse engineering whatever technology we can get our hands on. If we can capture even one of their ships. That's your job, Doctor, President Carter said. Find out how their technology works. Find its weaknesses. She looked around the room. I'm implementing Protocol Defiance as of right now. This is not a surrender. This is not a negotiation. This is a fight for the survival of our species. What's Protocol Defiance? Jake asked. General Barnes answered. It's a plan we developed for fighting an enemy that's much stronger than we are. Instead of meeting them head-on, we make them fight the kind of war they're not prepared for. We turn our weaknesses into strengths. How do we do that? Tony asked. Simple, President Carter said. They think we're chaotic and unpredictable, so we show them just how chaotic and unpredictable we can really be. They've never fought an enemy that turns everything into a weapon. They've never fought humans. Over the next few hours, the emergency council worked out the basic plan. Every military base would be prepared for immediate guerrilla operations. Scientists would work around the clock to understand Zephyrian technology. Civilian populations would be moved to hidden locations. But, most importantly, they would send a message to every human on Earth. The message was simple: we will not surrender. We will not give up. If the Zephyrians want to destroy humanity, they're going to have to work for it. As the meeting ended, Jake found himself talking to President Carter privately. Do you really think we can win this? He asked. President Carter looked out the window at the city lights. I think we can surprise them. They've studied our history, but they don't understand our spirit. They see our wars and think we're just violent. But those wars also taught us how to fight when everything seems hopeless. And if we lose, then we lose fighting. That's got to count for something. Jake nodded. What do you want me to do? Get back out there, find their ships, learn everything you can about them. And Jake? Yes, Madam President. Don't let them see you coming. As Jake left the White House, he looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Zephyrians were probably preparing for an easy conquest. They expected humans to be like every other species they had defeated. But Jake knew something the aliens didn't. Humans had never been like any other species, and they weren't about to start now. The first Zephyrian attack came at dawn on day 15. Their ships appeared over major cities around the world like gray thunderclouds. New York, London, Beijing, Moscow all saw the massive alien vessels hovering silently above them. Commander Fexthol expected immediate panic. He expected the human leaders to call for surrender within hours. Instead, he got something he had never seen before in 300 years of conquest. the humans started shooting. Every military base, every armed civilian, every police officer, they all opened fire on the Zephyrian ships. The bullets and missiles bounced off the alien shields like raindrops, but the humans kept shooting anyway. "This is illogical," Vexthul told his officers aboard the flagship. "They must see that their weapons cannot hurt us. Why do they continue?" His tactical officer, Subcommander Kethral, looked confused. "Perhaps they do not understand that resistance is futile. Then we will teach them." Vexthul ordered surgical strikes on military targets. Energy beams lanced down from the ships, destroying army bases, air force installations, and naval yards. The attacks were precise and devastating. Any normal species would have surrendered immediately. The humans got angry. Commander Alex Thompson crouched in the ruins of Fort Bragg, talking into his radio. "All units, this is Thompson. Pattern Alpha is in effect. Repeat, Pattern Alpha." Around him, soldiers gathered weapons and supplies from the destroyed base. They weren't retreating. They were scattering into small groups, disappearing into the countryside. "Sir," said Sergeant Bill Cooper, "shouldn't we be falling back to a defensive position?" Alex shook his head. "No defensive positions, that's what they expect. We're going underground, literally." Within hours, human resistance fighters had vanished into cities, forests, mountains, and deserts. They took their weapons with them. More importantly, they took their anger. The Zephyrians found themselves fighting shadows. Dr. Nina Foster worked in a hidden laboratory deep beneath the Colorado mountains. She had been studying the energy readings Tony Rodriguez brought back from the first encounter. What she found made her heart race with excitement. "Sam, come look at this," she called to her assistant, Sam Mitchell. Sam hurried over to her workstation. "What did you find, Doc?" "The Zephyrians use a quantum communication network to coordinate their ships. It's incredibly sophisticated, but it has a weakness." "What kind of weakness?" Nina pointed to the data on her screen. "They use a specific frequency to maintain their network connection. If we could disrupt that frequency, we might be able to confuse their coordination." Sam frowned. "But we'd need a massive transmitter to affect ships in orbit." "Not necessarily. Look at this." Nina pulled up another screen. "Their ships are constantly scanning for threats. If we could trick their sensors into thinking there's an interference pattern, we could use their own scanning systems against them," Sam finished. "That's brilliant. But how do we generate the right kind of signal?" Nina smiled. "Have you ever heard of ham radio?" Across the country, ham radio operators received strange messages. "Build this device. Set it to this frequency. Turn it on at exactly midnight." They didn't ask questions. They just did it. Maria Santos flew her modified crop-dusting plane low over the Virginia countryside. She had been a commercial pilot before the invasion, but now she was something else entirely. She was a hunter. In the back of her plane, she carried 50 pounds of fertilizer packed around a modified radio transmitter. It wasn't much of a bomb by military standards, but it didn't need to be. It just needed to get close enough to a Zephyrian patrol ship. "This is crazy," she muttered to herself as she spotted the alien vessel hovering over a small town. But crazy seems to be working. She dove toward the ship, staying below its sensor range until the last possible moment. When the aliens finally noticed her, she was already too close for their weapons to track her small, fast aircraft. Maria pulled the trigger that released her makeshift bomb and banked hard to the right. The explosion behind her was small, but the radio transmitter inside the bomb was broadcasting the frequency Dr. Foster had discovered. The Zephyrian ship's shields flickered. Just for a moment, but it was enough. From hidden positions around the town, human fighters opened up with everything they had. Rockets, grenades, even hunting rifles. The alien ship's shields had been weakened just enough for some of the attacks to get through. The ship didn't crash, but it retreated. That was a victory. Casey Wilson sat in his parents' basement surrounded by computers and gaming equipment. He was 17 years old and the best hacker in his high school. Now he was something much more important. He was humanity's secret weapon. "Okay," he said to his computer screen. "Let's see what you guys are really made of." Casey had been working for days to crack the alien communication protocols. It should have been impossible. The Zephyrian technology was thousands of years ahead of human computers, but Casey had advantages the aliens didn't expect. He was young, which meant his mind was flexible. He was a gamer, which meant he thought in terms of finding exploits and weaknesses. Most importantly, he was human, which meant he was too stubborn to accept that something was impossible. He had modified his gaming console, connecting it to every computer in his neighborhood through a network he had built himself. The combined processing power still wasn't close to what the aliens had, but it was enough to try something clever. Instead of trying to crack the alien codes directly, Casey decided to confuse them. He started broadcasting thousands of fake signals, on frequencies close to what the aliens used. It was like shouting gibberish in a library. It didn't matter if anyone understood you, as long as you made enough noise to disrupt everyone else. His plan worked better than he had hoped. Aboard the Zephyrian flagship, technical officers scrambled to understand what was happening to their communication network. "Sir," one of them reported to Vexthul, "we're getting massive interference on all channels. Someone is broadcasting random signals across our entire frequency spectrum." "Can you block it?" Vexthul demanded. "We're trying, sir, but there are too many signals coming from too many locations, and they keep changing frequencies." Vexthul felt something he had not experienced in decades: confusion. How is this possible? The humans do not have technology advanced enough to interfere with our systems. "Perhaps," his technical officer said carefully, "we underestimated their capabilities." Down on Earth, Dr. Paul Anderson was making his own discoveries. He had been studying samples of Zephyrian technology recovered from damaged patrol ships. What he found surprised him. The aliens had incredible technology, but it was all designed to work perfectly in controlled conditions. Their systems had no redundancy, no backup plans for unexpected situations. "They're not used to chaos," he explained to his research team. "Their whole civilization is built on order and predictability. When something doesn't work the way they expect, their technology can't adapt." "So how do we use that against them?" asked Dr. Jennifer Walsh. "We give them chaos, real chaos. We make nothing work the way they expect it to." That night, every human resistance cell received the same message: make it messy, make it loud, make it unpredictable. The war was just beginning, and the Zephyrians were starting to realize they had made a terrible mistake. They had expected to fight a primitive species with primitive weapons. Instead, they found themselves fighting something much more dangerous. They were fighting human creativity. 3 weeks into the invasion, High Commander Vexthul stood before the tactical display in his command center, staring at reports that made no sense. His officers waited nervously for orders that weren't coming. "Explain this to me again," Vexthul said slowly. "How did we lose 3 patrol ships to a species that barely has space travel?" Sub-Commander Kethral cleared his throat. "The humans are using unconventional tactics, sir. They modify civilian vehicles into weapons. They coordinate attacks through primitive communication systems we didn't think were worth monitoring. They turn their own infrastructure against us." "Infrastructure?" "Yes, sir. Yesterday they collapsed a bridge just as one of our ground patrols was crossing it. The patrol survived, but they've been trapped in a canyon for 16 hours while human fighters attack them from the cliffs." Vexthul turned to his tactical officer. "And the status of our communication network?" "Still experiencing massive interference, sir. We've identified over 3,000 individual transmission sources. Every time we shut down one, 2 more appear." 3,000? Vexthul's voice rose. "How does a primitive species coordinate 3,000 transmission points?" "We don't know, sir. Their coordination methods don't match any patterns we've seen before." What the Zephyrians didn't understand was that they weren't fighting one enemy. They were fighting millions of enemies who all happened to be working toward the same goal. Every human with a radio was part of the resistance. Every person with a computer was a potential hacker. Every civilian was a possible spy. Captain Steve Parker crouched in the wreckage of his fighter jet, checking his equipment one last time. His plane had been shot down during a raid on a Zephyrian supply ship, but that was part of the plan. The crash had been fake, The real mission was just beginning. Phoenix Base, this is Walker, he whispered into his radio. I'm in position. Copy that, Walker. You have 20 minutes before the next patrol cycle. Steve looked up at the massive Zephyrian mothership floating 200 feet above him. Getting inside would be suicide for anyone sane. Fortunately, the Resistance had stopped recruiting sane people weeks ago. He fired his grappling hook at the ship's hull and began climbing. The Zephyrians had shields that could stop missiles, but they didn't expect individual humans to physically climb onto their ships. It was too crazy, too desperate, too human. Inside the ship, Steve moved carefully through corridors designed for aliens. He had studied the layout from intelligence gathered by other suicide missions. His target was the ship's central computer core. He didn't plan to steal anything or download data. He had something much simpler in mind. Steve planted a small device next to the computer core and activated it. The device was nothing more than a radio transmitter connected to a timer. In 10 minutes, it would broadcast Casey Wilson's interference signal directly into the ship's main computer. Phoenix Base, package delivered, he radioed. Roger that, Walker. Time to go. But Steve wasn't going anywhere. He had used the last of his fuel to get here, and there was no way down except a 200-foot drop. That was fine. He had signed up for a suicide mission. As alarms began blaring throughout the ship, Steve sat down next to the computer core and smiled. In 8 minutes, this entire mothership would lose communication with the fleet. The chaos that followed would give human fighters a chance to hit 3 other targets simultaneously. Not bad for a primitive species, he said to himself. The timer reached 0. The Zephyrian mothership went dark. Commander Beth Turner watched through binoculars as alien ships across the sky suddenly stopped moving in formation. Some drifted aimlessly. Others collided with each other. A few began firing at random targets, unable to distinguish friend from foe. All units, this is Turner, she spoke into her radio. Operation Backfire is a go. Hit them now while they're confused. Across 3 continents, human resistance cells emerged from hiding. They attacked Zephyrian positions with everything from stolen alien weapons to homemade explosives. The aliens, cut off from their command network, couldn't coordinate a response. For the first time since the invasion began, humans were winning, but the victory came at a cost. Steve Parker was dead. So were dozens of other fighters who had given their lives to disrupt alien communication networks. Their sacrifice was not forgotten. Commander Ryan Cole received the news about Steve's death while preparing for his own mission. He was supposed to attack a Zephyrian destroyer that was bombarding human settlements from orbit. Sir, his wingman said over the radio, our missiles won't penetrate their shields. This is a suicide run. I know, Ryan replied. Steve Parker just proved that sometimes suicide runs are the only thing that works. Ryan dove his fighter toward the alien destroyer, dodging defensive fire from its weapons. His plane was fast, but the alien gunners were faster. Multiple hits tore through his engines and control systems. As his fighter began to break apart, Ryan aimed for the destroyer's main cannon. He couldn't hurt the ship with missiles, but he could hurt it by crashing directly into its weapons. Tell them back home, he radioed to his wingman. Tell them we don't surrender. Ryan's fighter slammed into the alien cannon at full speed. The explosion didn't destroy the destroyer, but it crippled its main weapon. More importantly, it sent a message to every Zephyrian in the fleet. Humans would rather die than give up. In his command center, Vexthul watched the tactical display with growing alarm. Red warning lights indicated damaged ships, severed communication links, and failed missions. Nothing was going according to plan. Sir, his communications officer reported, we're receiving a transmission from the human leadership. Put it through. President. Helen Carter's face appeared on the screen. She looked tired but determined. Hi, Commander Vexthul, she said. I wanted to thank you. Thank me? Vexthul was genuinely confused. Yes. You've given humanity something we haven't had in decades. A common enemy. A shared purpose. You've united every human on Earth in a way that nothing else could. Your resistance is futile. Vexthul said. We have superior technology, superior numbers, superior firepower. President Carter smiled. You know what you don't have? Superior motivation. Your soldiers are fighting because they were ordered to. Our people are fighting because they choose to. That makes all the difference. You cannot defeat the Zephyrian Empire. Maybe not, Carter admitted. But we can make you pay for every inch. We can make this conquest so expensive, so difficult, so painful, that other species will think twice before you try to conquer them too. The transmission ended. Vexthul stared at the blank screen, feeling something he had never felt before in his long military career. Doubt. His species had conquered hundreds of worlds, but they had always fought enemies who wanted to live. Enemies who would surrender when the cost became too high. Enemies who valued their lives more than their freedom. The humans were different. They seemed to prefer death to slavery. Every time the Zephyrians won a battle, the humans came back angrier and more determined. Every casualty they inflicted created 2 more resistance fighters. Sir, his tactical officer said quietly, our projected timeline for conquest has been extended again. Current estimates suggest it could take years to fully pacify the human population. Years? Vexthul turned to stare at him. You said it would take weeks. That was before we understood what we were fighting, sir. The humans don't fight like any species we've encountered. They don't have a breaking point. Vexthul looked back at the tactical display. Half his fleet was showing damage indicators. His communication network was still compromised. His ground forces were trapped in guerrilla warfare against an enemy. That seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at once. For the first time in 3 centuries, High Commander Vexthul wondered if he might lose a war. High Commander Vexthul made his decision on day 27 of the invasion. The human resistance had proven more troublesome than any enemy he had faced in 300 years of conquest. It was time to end this permanently. Activate the planet killer weapons, he ordered from his flagship's bridge. Target their moon first. When the humans see we can destroy entire worlds, they will finally surrender. His officers exchanged worried glances. Planet killer weapons were reserved for the most extreme situations. Using them meant the Zephyrian Empire was admitting it could not win through normal conquest. Sir, Sub-Commander Kethral said carefully, are we certain this is necessary? The humans are primitive. Surely we can defeat them without destroying their worlds. Vexthul turned to face him with fury in his black eyes. Primitive? They have cost us more ships in 4 weeks than we lost in the last century of conquest. Their resistance grows stronger every day. No, Kethral. They are not primitive. They are something much more dangerous. What are they, sir? They are fanatics. They value their principles more than their lives. Such enemies can only be completely destroyed. The order went out across the Zephyrian fleet. Every ship capable of planetary bombardment turned its weapons toward Earth's moon, where human forces had established their most important research facility. Colonel Jerry Lewis stood in the command center of Luna Base, watching the tactical display as dozens of alien ships moved into bombardment position. He knew what was coming. They all did. Sir, said Dr. Amy Roberts, the base's chief scientist, we're detecting massive energy buildup from the Zephyrian fleet. They're preparing to destroy the entire base. Jerry nodded calmly. How long do we have? 15 minutes, maybe 20. And the project? Dr. Amy checked her instruments. Dr. Kevin Clark says he needs at least 30 minutes to complete the quantum weapon calibration. Jerry thought for a moment. Then we give him 30 minutes. He activated the base-wide communication system. All personnel, this is Colonel Lewis. The aliens are preparing to destroy Luna Base. We cannot evacuate. We cannot escape. But we can still complete our mission. Throughout the base, human scientists and soldiers continued working. They didn't run. They didn't panic. They had accepted that they were going to die, so they focused on making their deaths count for something. Dr. Kevin Clark worked frantically in the quantum research lab, his hands moving over controls that most humans couldn't even understand. The quantum weapon he was building wouldn't destroy the Zephyrian fleet. It was designed to do something much more interesting. Amy, He called to Dr. Roberts over the communication system. I need you to overload the main reactor exactly 3 minutes after the bombardment begins. Kevin, that will create a massive explosion. It'll destroy everything for miles. Exactly. But if I time it right with the quantum field generator, the explosion will create an artificial wormhole. A big one. Amy understood immediately. You're going to suck their ships into it. As many as I can. It's not about winning the war, Amy. It's about making them pay the highest possible price for killing us. The Zephyrian bombardment began precisely on schedule. Energy beams lanced down from orbit, turning sections of Luna Base into molten metal. The base's shields held for almost 2 minutes before collapsing completely. But the humans inside didn't stop working. Colonel Lewis died at his post, still coordinating defensive fire against the alien ships. Dr. Roberts died while manually overloading the reactor, her last act ensuring the explosion would happen exactly when Kevin needed it. Dr. Kevin Clark died with his hand on the quantum field generator, activating it at the precise moment the reactor exploded. The explosion that destroyed Luna Base was visible from Earth, but what happened next was visible across 3 star systems. A massive wormhole opened in space, its gravitational pull so strong that it began sucking in everything nearby. 3 Zephyrian dreadnoughts disappeared into the wormhole instantly. 2 more were torn apart by gravitational forces as they tried to escape. High Commander Vexthul watched in horror as a quarter of his fleet was destroyed by humans who were already dead. How is this possible? He demanded. They were primitive. They barely understood space travel. His science officer was studying the readings from the disaster. Sir, they somehow created an artificial wormhole using their reactor explosion as a power source. The precision required for such a feat is extraordinary. Extraordinary? They're all dead. Yes, sir. But they took 5 of our best ships with them. And, sir, what? The wormhole is still growing. We need to move the fleet away from this area immediately. As the Zephyrian ships retreated from the expanding wormhole, every human on Earth received the same message. It came from Captain Laura Bell, commander of the resistance cell that had been operating near Luna Base. This is Captain Bell to all resistance units. Luna Base is gone. But before they died, our people took out 5 alien dreadnoughts. They've shown us something important. The aliens can kill us, but they can't break us. We don't surrender. We don't compromise. We win or we die trying. Her transmission was interrupted by an explosion. The Zephyrians had found her position and destroyed it. But her words had already spread to every resistance fighter on Earth. Within hours, suicide attacks began across the globe. Human fighters loaded themselves with explosives and crashed into alien positions. Scientists triggered reactor overloads that took out entire alien garrisons. Civilians threw themselves at alien patrols with nothing but kitchen knives and the absolute certainty that they would rather die free than live as slaves. The Zephyrians had seen desperate enemies before. They had fought species that used suicide tactics when cornered, but they had never encountered anything like this. The humans weren't just willing to die, they were eager to die if it meant taking aliens with them. Every human death seemed to inspire 10 more humans to fight harder. Every destroyed resistance cell was immediately replaced by 2 new ones. Sir, Vexthul's tactical officer reported with fear in his voice. We're losing ground forces faster than we can replace them. The humans have turned their entire population into weapons. How many ships have we lost? Vexthul asked quietly. 12 destroyed, 23 severely damaged. That's nearly half our invasion fleet. Vexthul stared at the tactical display. Red markers showed damaged or destroyed Zephyrian positions across Earth. Blue markers showed active human resistance cells. There were thousands of blue markers, and more appeared every hour. They're not fighting to win, he said to himself. They're fighting to make us lose. Sir, don't you see? They know they can't defeat our empire, but they can make conquering them so expensive that we'll never try to conquer another world like theirs. They're not just fighting for their own freedom. They're fighting for every species we might encounter in the future. For the first time in his long career, Vexthul felt something approaching respect for an enemy. The humans had turned their greatest weakness, their refusal to accept logical surrender, into their greatest strength. But respect wouldn't save them. He still had enough firepower to destroy their entire world. It would be costly and wasteful, but it would end this nightmare. Prepare the fleet for total planetary bombardment, he ordered. We will turn their entire world into molten rock. If they want to choose death over surrender, we will give them death. His officers began implementing the order, but Vexthul noticed their reluctance. For the first time, his own soldiers were questioning his commands. The humans had done more than resist conquest. They had shown the galaxy what real courage looked like. Even Vexthul's own troops were beginning to wonder if destroying such a species was really the right thing to do. But orders were orders. The bombardment would begin in 6 hours. The humans had 6 hours to live. Fleet Admiral Gary Stone stood in the command center of humanity's first interstellar battleship, hidden in the asteroid belt beyond Mars. The ship didn't look like much. Humans had built it from salvaged alien technology and spare parts from destroyed space stations, but it worked, and right now that was all that mattered. "Admiral," said his communications officer, "we're receiving the final transmission from Earth." President Carter's voice came through the speakers, calm despite the fact that alien ships were preparing to destroy her planet. "Admiral Stone, this is likely our last communication. The Zephyrian fleet is moving into bombardment position. You know what to do." Gary nodded grimly. For weeks, while the Resistance fought on Earth, human engineers had been working on a desperate plan. Using technology reverse-engineered from captured alien ships, they had built humanity's first real space warship. It wasn't much compared to a Zephyrian dreadnought, but it had one crucial advantage. The aliens didn't know it existed. "All stations, report readiness," Gary ordered. "Weapons ready," called out Lieutenant Danny Price from the tactical station. "Engines ready," reported Chief Engineer Carol Davis. "Communication jamming array online," said the electronic warfare officer. Gary looked at the tactical display showing the Zephyrian fleet in orbit around Earth. 43 alien ships preparing to turn humanity's homeworld into a lifeless rock. It should have been hopeless. But Gary had learned something important over the past month. Hope wasn't about having good odds. Hope was about refusing to give up even when the odds were impossible. "Begin Operation Last Stand," he ordered. Gary, human battleship dropped out of the asteroid field and accelerated toward Earth. At the same time, every surviving resistance cell on the planet received the same message. "The cavalry is coming." High Commander Vexthul was reviewing bombardment coordinates when his sensor officer called out in alarm. "Sir, new contact approaching from the asteroid belt. It's moving fast and broadcasting on all frequencies. Put the transmission on speakers," Vexthul ordered. Admiral Gary Stone's voice filled the Zephyrian command center. "High Commander Vexthul, this is Fleet Admiral Gary Stone of the Human Defense Fleet. I'm here to discuss terms." Vexthul almost laughed. "Terms? You have one primitive ship against my entire fleet. What terms could you possibly offer?" "Simple. A duel. Single combat between representatives of our species. If your champion wins, humanity surrenders. If mine wins, you leave our system and never return." "Ridiculous. I could destroy your ship with a single volley." "Maybe. But think about what that would mean. The Zephyrian Empire, rulers of hundreds of worlds, so afraid of one human ship that they wouldn't accept a fair fight. How would that look to the rest of the galaxy?" Vexthul felt anger rising in his chest. In his long career, no enemy had ever dared to question his courage. But as he prepared to order his fleet to open fire, something stopped him. His tactical officer was staring at the sensor readings. "Sir, that human ship, it's broadcasting our own identification codes. How is that possible?" "What do you mean?" "They've somehow integrated Zephyrian technology into their vessel. Our sensors are registering it as partially Zephyrian." Vexthul studied the readings himself. The human ship was a patchwork of different technologies, but it included systems from at least a dozen captured Zephyrian vessels. In just 4 weeks, the humans had reverse-engineered alien technology that had taken his species centuries to develop. "They learned from every ship we lost," he said quietly. "Every battle, every defeat. They studied our technology and made it their own." "Sir, what are your orders?" Vexthul made a decision that surprised even himself. I accept the challenge. Prepare my personal fighter. I will face their champion myself. His officers stared at him in shock. Sir, you don't need to risk yourself. Send a subordinate. No, I have underestimated this species from the beginning. I will not compound that error by showing them anything less than respect. 20 minutes later, two small ships faced each other in the space between Earth and the Zephyrian fleet. Vexthul piloted his personal fighter, equipped with the most advanced weapons in the alien arsenal. Colonel Danny Price flew a modified human interceptor, armed with weapons built from salvaged alien technology. Are you ready, human? Vexthul asked over the communication channel. Been ready all my life, Danny replied. The two ships circled each other like ancient gladiators. Vexthul had 3 centuries of combat experience. His ship was faster, stronger, and more heavily armed. By every logical measure, he should have won easily. But Danny Price had something Vexthul didn't expect. He had 4 weeks of learning how Zephyrian technology worked. More importantly, he had 4 weeks of pure, concentrated human anger. The battle was brutal and short. Vexthul's superior firepower should have ended it quickly, but Danny's ship was more maneuverable than expected. The human pilot used tactics that made no sense: ramming attacks, impossible turns, maneuvers that should have torn his ship apart. How are you doing this? Vexthul demanded as Danny's ship somehow survived a direct hit that should have destroyed it. Human engineering, Danny replied, firing a missile that punched through the alien shields. We build things tough because we expect them to break. Vexthul's ship began to lose power. His weapon systems failed one by one. As his fighter drifted helplessly in space, he realized something that shook him to his core. He was going to lose. After 3 centuries of victory, he was going to be defeated by a species he had dismissed as primitive. You fought well, human, he said over the communication channel. So did you, Danny replied. But here's the thing about humans. We don't know when to quit. Danny's ship moved closer to the crippled Zephyrian fighter. For a moment, Vexthul thought the human was going to finish him off. Instead, Danny did something that changed everything. He docked with the alien ship and came aboard. Vexthul found himself facing a human in person for the first time. Danny Price was smaller than the alien commander, and his shipsuit was patched and worn. He looked tired and hurt, but his eyes burned with something Vexthul had never seen in a defeated enemy: determination. Even in victory, the human was still determined to keep fighting. The duel is over, Vexthul said. You have won. I will honor the terms. Danny nodded. I need to know something first. Why did you really want to destroy us? Was it really because we were chaotic and dangerous? Vexthul considered the question carefully. At first, yes, but later, we wanted to destroy you because you showed us something we had forgotten. What's that? What it means to fight for something more important than survival. Your people would rather die than compromise their principles. That kind of courage is dangerous to an empire built on making others surrender. Danny extended his hand. It doesn't have to be dangerous. It could be inspiring instead. For a long moment, Vexthul stared at the offered hand. Then, slowly, he reached out and shook it. The Zephyrian fleet will withdraw from your system, he said. But I must warn you, other empires will come. Some will be worse than us. Let them come, Danny said. We'll be ready. As news of the victory spread across both fleets, something unprecedented happened. Several Zephyrian ships requested permission to defect. Their crews had been watching human courage for weeks, and they wanted to learn what it felt like to fight for something they believed in, rather than something they were ordered to do. Ambassador Lisa Hayes conducted the formal surrender ceremony on Earth. The terms were surprisingly generous. The Zephyrian Empire would withdraw completely from human space. In exchange, humans would share some of their reverse-engineered technology and provide medical aid to injured alien survivors. You are showing mercy to enemies who tried to destroy you, Vexthul observed during the ceremony. That's what we do, Lisa replied. We fight like demons when we have to. But when the fighting's over, we try to build something better. Months later, Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of Earth's first orbital defense station. The platform was built using a combination of human engineering and alien technology, defended by volunteers from a dozen different species who had heard about humanity's resistance. Jake thought about the Zephyrian commander's final words before his fleet departed. Vexthal had said that other empires would come and some would be worse than the Zephyrians. That was fine. Humanity would be ready for them, too. The aliens had made one fatal mistake. They had judged humans by the standards of every other species they had conquered. They had seen human chaos and assumed it meant weakness. They had seen human stubbornness and assumed it meant primitiveness. They had been wrong about everything. Humans weren't weak because they struggled. The struggle had made them stronger. They weren't primitive because they refused to accept logical surrender. They were evolved enough to know that some things were worth dying for. Most importantly, they weren't alone anymore. Word of humanity's resistance had spread across the galaxy. Other oppressed species were beginning to rebel against their conquerors, inspired by the example of a small blue planet that had refused to surrender. The Zephyrian Empire had wanted to destroy humanity because they were dangerous to the established order. They had been absolutely right.